let's go deeper on them. Let's talk about the consequences. You talked about energy crisis and refugees. And Hungary, so there's been almost 8 million people that have fled Ukraine since the beginning of the war. And this is almost 20% of the population. You have taken in 1.5 million of those. And I'd like to also say that I have had the privilege of being in the Ukrainian Refugee Center in Hungary for a couple of hours. And I was astounded by the level of services and efficiency that you have provided to them. So could you speak just a little more on that? What has been the Hungarian response to the crisis, the refugees, but also to the humanitarian crisis inside of Ukraine?
Look, parallel to what I have said so far, we have been carrying out the largest humanitarian operation of the country ever. You also have to know that before the war, we didn't have a perfect relationship with the Ukrainians, to say the least. The reason for the conflicts we had was that there's a Hungarian community of 150,000 living in the western part of Ukraine, whose rights have been violated on a continuous basis. So their rights to have access to mother language, so own language, education, media, culture, whatever, that was violated on a daily basis. But of course now we put this issue into brackets because, I mean, during war, it's not appropriate to raise such kind of questions. So with all in mind, the Hungarian people have united their efforts in a really tremendous way. Church organizations, volunteers, the state, the local municipalities have put all the necessary resources. And we have received everyone who came because, you know, we are we represent a very strong anti-migration policy. You might know that as well. We're saying that all refugees who are coming from the neighborhood are welcome. Because for the refugees in Ukraine, we are the first safe country. And this is the game changer. We are the first safe country. So we let everybody in. But for those who are coming from far away and violating borders between safe and secure countries, you know, in the series, we don't let anyone in. So while we allow everyone to come in from the east, we stop everybody from the south. So we have allowed, you say, 1.5 million refugees so far, but we have stopped 250,000 illegal migrants from south coming to Hungary. And we have built a fence. Your president loves that, you know that, and it is kind of waterproof, and we are, you know, just keeping the migrants out. But when it comes to the refugees, what we have done is that we made it sure that all refugees have equal access, both to education and healthcare, equal access compared to the Hungarian citizen. So far, there are refugee children enrolled in 1,300 schools and kindergartens in Hungary. You know, our language has no relationship to any other language in the world. So once I start to speak Hungarian, everything is being kept in secret. So we have to put a lot of efforts, really a lot of efforts, to help these young Ukrainians to understand what is going on around them. That's why basically a lot of those who arrive to us move on either to Czech Republic or to Poland, because there the language is much more known to them. You know, it's easier for them to get along, but not in Hungary.
Could I add also that I saw the stations there where the Hungarians are giving bus, plane, train tickets to the people to take them where they want to go.
Sure. And we also made a program that we give cash incentive to the companies to employ refugees. Because what we think is that these people are coming and they basically feel humiliated. They have to leave their home. They have to escape. They have one bag. You know, the kids have one, you know, toy bear. Really, really bad and hard to see. So we have to give back the dignity of theirs somehow. And you know, if you just sit around and wait for the aid on a weekly or monthly basis, this is not something that gives back the dignity to you. But if you can go to work every morning, you feel yourself useful, you are being integrated, then it gives back dignity as well. So that's why we give incentive to the companies to employ to employ refugees as well. That's, I think, very, very important. And the churches, the historic churches, the Catholics and the Protestants are making fantastic, really fantastic job, and the Jewish community as well, to help the refugees. So we make it as long as it is necessary, obviously, but we hope that it will stop sometime.
I'm smiling because I also saw stations set up to take in dogs and cats and help them with veterinary care. So you guys have really gone above and beyond, I believe, but thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Could I turn to the energy crisis?
Sure,
You
sure.
really were talking about that, and I find it extremely fascinating what's been going on with Putin reducing natural gas to Europe. And can you just tell us a little bit more about how Western sanctions actually have affected the European economies and your response to the energy crisis?
If you look at the methodology of the operation of the European economy before the war, one of the major pillars of our competitiveness was that there was a good cooperation, a good combination of the natural resources relatively cheaply arriving from Russia and the highly developed Western European technology. So this was a kind of combination, Russian energy sources, European technology, based on which the European economy could be competitive and successful. 40% of the European gas consumption was covered by Russian gas. 40%. So it's a lot. And if you have a common sense, you can understand very easily, without being an energy expert, that replacing such a share of energy within a year or 2 or 3 years, simply impossible. Because, once again, it's not ideology or politics or communication. You need infrastructure, you need LNG ports, you need pipeline, whatever. So money. So if you are, let's say, in such a situation, if you are used to such a situation, then it's very complicated to change very quickly. And yes, Putin is decreasing the volume of energy delivered to Europe. That you're right. But on the other hand, I have to tell you that we Europeans have made a lot of stupid decisions in this regard. A lot of stupid decisions. Because currently, I'm representing the country on the meeting of the energy ministers as well, and I have a naive illusion, now I say, that there at least some common sense will be around. Because energy ministers, they have to deal with real physical issue, not like foreign ministers, because I can say whatever, there's no physical, but there's no physical, let's say, consequence. But on energy, if you don't have a heating, that's a kind of problem. So, and now the German energy minister, for example, says it proudly that the consumption of gas has decreased by 25% in Germany. And I sit there and I don't understand why on earth he's not crying about this. Because if there's a 25% decrease of consumption of gas, that is a sign of recession. Because it's not that gas would have been replaced by solar, whatever, in such a short period of time. This is the decreasing demand of energy.
And factories are closing down,
employees
employees are out of work.
And people are getting unemployed. So there's a recession in Europe on the corner. The news, you have seen the news that 20, 30, whatever LNG ships are waiting to be allowed to enter the Spanish LNG ports. So for energy ministers say, what a fantastic news that they are there. There are two problems. One, there's no capacity to receive them. So if there's an LNG ship out on the sea, it doesn't mean you will have heating. And number two, okay, they are let in the ports. My question is, where's the pipeline which delivers that gas to Europe? So the Spanish either can, just put it on fire, or give it to the Portuguese, but at the end of the day, the Portuguese will not need so. So because there's no connection to anywhere else.
And what about the oil embargo?
The oil embargo, look, the oil prices are increasing in Europe definitely because there's. I graduated from the University of Economy, and there we have learned very simple dogma, saying that if you reduce a volume of certain product on a market, then the price will increase. Not very complicated to understand, and vice versa the same. So if you decrease the volume of oil or gas on the European market by excluding one specific source, it means that the price will increase. So it's not a huge surprise and very easy to understand. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So, for example, in our case, we Hungarians got exemption. We had to fight a lot for it, but we got exemption from the oil embargo because if you phase out the Russian oil from our energy mix, then the other pipeline has like half of a capacity, which could be an alternative, which means it's not enough. And but that take place like 4 months ago. What happened in the last 4 months regarding increasing the capacity of that replacement, which is not on the territory of us? Nothing. Nothing. So it's just, communication again.
What has Brussels' response been to Hungary's policy on Ukraine as far as the energy goes, the oil?
That we are the best allies of Putin. That's what they say. It's simple. We have been in office for 13 years now. And why they hate us is the following. We have a conservative government. Very conservative, let's put it this way. We believe in the family as being an alliance between a man and a woman, where the man is the husband, the woman is the wife, and children, and we have a law which says that the parents do have the exclusive right to educate their children regarding sexual orientation.
Imagine that.
Yeah. We have banned both homosexual and transgender propaganda to be shown to children. We have banned such kind of NGOs from entering schools. That's why European Union holds back 7 billion euros currently from the country, because saying we are too retrograde and not progressive enough. And so we are a conservative, patriotic, Christian democratic government. And with this, we are hated like hell in Europe, because the international liberal mainstream cannot digest that there's such a government in office for 13 years and being successful. Because with the existence of ours, we give a proof that what they say, the liberal mainstream, is simply false. Because what the liberal mainstream says is the following. They are the only progressive way forward, they are the only tolerant, they are the only whatever. And with us, it's obvious that no, it's not the truth. It's not true. Because
I
you
try
can do
to
it the other way.
explain that to people that say, "Oh no, but the news says," and I said, "Yes, and you're a conservative. What does the news say about you? Is it
that's
true?"
Right. And you know what? I said that we have a different definition of democracy, but there's a different definition of media freedom as well. Because what happens in Hungary is the following: around half of the media landscape is conservative. Another half is liberal. A half is supportive of what the government is doing, half does not like it at all. But this is being considered as a dictatorship by the Westerners. Why? Because they only consider a national media landscape free if it is 95% liberal. If it is not 95% liberal, that is a dictatorship immediately. So that's why our job is easier than the other conservatives in Europe, because if we are attacked externally or by leftist media, the rightist media protects us.
Yes, I've tried to explain that one too. I'm doing my best.
Thank you.
Could we turn, sir,
We have
to...
another ambassador here then, right?
Yes, we do. Well, that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Could we talk now about the future and the threat of escalation? Sure. Because NATO keeps increasing the amount of aid and increasing the number of weapons and lethality of the weapons that are going to Ukraine. And I was just wondering, do you see this as a proxy war against the Russians by NATO?
Look, we are one of the very few countries in Europe which does not deliver weapons. We are one of the few. And we are the only one in the European Union which doesn't take part in the training mission of the European Union provided to the Ukrainian army. Why? Because we are interested in peace and not in escalation. And we always represent the position in NATO that the last step towards something that none of us wants in this room, I guess, would be NATO as an alliance getting involved. And we are just at the line, I guess, at the fence, to say that. Because now the NATO member states are carrying a lot of weapons to Ukraine, a lot of them. Now Russia considers this as not an involvement of NATO, involvement of member states of NATO. But once this mindset is changed, and someone starts to say that, okay, this is a war where NATO is being involved, then it can have tragic consequences, really tragic consequences. So you ask me whether it's a proxy war or not. What I can tell you is that this war will not end with negotiations between the Ukrainians and the Russians, for sure. This war will only end in case the American and the American and the Russian administration can sit to the same table and can agree. I'm pretty sure about that. I'm pretty sure about it.
And I do want to also talk to you about the Hungarian roadmap for peace, and I think you're laying it out there. Before I do that, let me ask you this, and it's kind of a loaded question, as we say in the U.S. Our U.S. military put the U.S. on DEFCON 3 alert status in February. Last week, we found that the 101st Airborne Division, which is an elite assault division of the United States, has been deployed to Europe for the first time in 80 years, and our DEFCON 3 status is first time since 9/11, and we're hearing about threats of dirty bombs, etc. So I'm just want to know, what do you make about this? Are you concerned with nuclear war, an escalation that gets us there?
Well, I hope that I hope that no one loses its common sense entirely. And those who are the decision makers will have a very small piece of responsibility in their mind and will not make such a decision. Because, you know, once again, we are living in a neighborhood. We are not a nuclear superpower. We are a small, landlocked country. And I can understand that from here, which is an ocean away, with huge army, with huge navy, with huge air force, with nuclear weapons, that seems a little bit different than from our perspective in the neighborhood. So we don't want to be victims of geopolitics again. We want no one to play war on our expense, you know. So I wish we were also asked before of such kind of decisions, you know, because the escalation will not take place here. The escalation will take place in Europe, where we live, and we are too close. I have to tell you.
And the reason I bring these things up is they're so obscurely buried in our media, and I want to make sure that you understand that the elite assault division is practicing war only 3 miles from the Ukrainian border, and the commanders are saying that they're ready to go into Ukraine. This is on CBS News. This isn't Fox News. So just want to make people aware of that. So you were talking about peace, and so please tell us the roadmap for peace from the Hungarian point of view.
Look, it was 3 days after the war broke out. I called Sergei Lavrov, my Russian colleague, and I called Andriy Yermak, the head of the presidential administration in Kiev. And I told both of them that here we are in the neighborhood. We have pragmatic relationship with both. We can ensure fair, secure, level playing field circumstances for everyone. Please come there and talk about peace. You are all welcome. We ensure all the necessary circumstances and conditions. And this is the most what we can do. Once again, as a small neighboring country, the only thing what we can do is to offer all our capacities if peace talks are supposed to take place. We're ready to mediate, but I mean, to be a mediator, you have to be asked by 2 parties. None of them has asked us so far. We can offer ground physically for discussion, but that's it. That's what we can do, and we can speak about it. But you know, and I don't give it up. I speak about it openly, regardless how much I'm attacked. I keep on meeting with the Russian officials, regardless how much I'm being attacked because of this. Because if we cut these channels, then we shouldn't speak about peace, because it will not take place, or just very far away. So our roadmap is talk to each other. And you know what I want to say is that there's going to be a G20 meeting in Indonesia. And that means that there's a chance, I don't know whether it will be the reality, but there's a chance that both presidents will be in the same physical location for a certain period of time. And I don't think that any of these two could give a legitimate explanation to anybody in the world why they don't meet. So I understand that protocol is important. I understand that it's very important to look as the one who dictates the preconditions. I understand everything, but this is about lives. You know, I mean, thousands of people are dying, millions of people are fleeing. European economy is on its knees. People are losing their jobs. So I don't think this is the right time to play a strong guy. I mean, they are in the same place, and I think it would be very, very complicated to explain in a legitimate manner why they don't meet and why they not talk to each other.
But Mr. Szijjártó, this is, I would like to know how you would answer this. A lot of people are basing this reaction to the war with the number of military supplies that we are giving to Ukraine on the assumption that if Russia were to succeed in Ukraine, they continue to push into NATO. I'm wondering, do you think this is a real threat to NATO? Does Russia have in its mind a reconquest of Hungary, of Poland, of half of Germany, the pre-1989 borders?
What I think is that no one in the world would consider to attack any NATO member state, and no one in the world would consider to get in a war with NATO, because we are the strongest. We are the strongest. And I don't think anyone would want to have a war with us.
What do you think might motivate the Biden administration to talk about peace?
Do they talk about this?
No.
All right. You know, maybe it's just okay. It's just a kind of let's say attempt in my mind. Why not? Because I do believe that, as we see it in Europe, that if President Trump had been president, this wouldn't have broken out. And that's kind of a failure, right? And why you should speak about your own weakness.
Interestingly, yesterday or Monday, the Progressive Caucus in Congress put out a letter to the Biden administration urging them to talk about peace. Then yesterday, they retracted that letter. So it was only about 24 hours and blamed it on staff putting it out too early. So that's where we are on that.
They are called Democratic Party, right?
Yes. Yes.
Freedom of expression and freedom of thoughts, right?
And thoughts. Well, I'd like to, if you don't mind, unless you have anything else to say, I'd like to open up the floor to discussion. If you have a question or comment, could you please keep it under 60 seconds? Mr. Lobianco. And Mr. Lobianco, we have a microphone there.
Peace. How, when you say it's between the United States and Russia to form this peace, it would wind up, I would think, that we would wind up rewarding Russia in some way, or as the map is now, saying, okay, you could have this much of Ukraine. I have no idea that Ukraine would ever agree to that, but it's going to cost us. It's costing us now. It's going to cost us far more than what it's costing us now, because again, if peace should ever come, who's going to rebuild Ukraine? Where's that money coming from? Yeah. But okay, I'll keep it under that. But what does it look like? What would peace look like if you're negotiating with Russia?
Good
I mean,
question.
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. We go one by one? Okay. Look, we wish we would be there, right? We wish we would be there to discuss the conditions. Of course, we as a country which has suffered under communist regime for 40 years, we definitely stand up for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all countries, including Ukraine. Territorial integrity and sovereignty. But the longer this war takes, the more it will cost to reconstruct the country. And we have to make very serious decisions, because I don't have too much expectations about funds coming from anywhere else from the world to reconstruct Ukraine but Europe, to be very honest. We don't have too big expectations in this regard. And the funds will have to come from Europe, from a continent which is in its worst shape, economically speaking, since the Second World War. So the sooner it ends, the easier it will be to reconstruct.
And something to keep in mind, the U.S. has promised or appropriated almost $70 billion. Most of that is military assistance. We provide the main military assistance. And there is almost no oversight or accountability on these funds. We know in Afghanistan, these funds fell into the hands of the Taliban when we didn't have oversight. So it's just something to think in mind, falling in the hands of corrupt actors. Yes, sir. Will you wait for the microphone?
Hi, I'm Cameron Erickson. I'm LA for Congressman Clyde. And I was wondering, being at the border, at the front line, close to the front line, if you will, how would you say the war is going? Would you say Ukraine is making gains? Is Russia making gains? Because we don't get the full picture here in the mainstream legacy media. Thank you.
Excellent question.
Well, thanks a lot. You know, regardless of the fact that we are closer, but we are not there, so we are somehow, you know, being defenseless to news coming from whatever sources. But what we understand is the following: that the front line is very long. It's like more than 1,000-kilometer long front line. So this means that sometimes one of them is successful in pushing forward, sometimes the other one is successful in pushing. But what we understood is that no real big major strategic changes have taken place yet. So it's kind of getting frozen. That's what we see most likely. So those, you might have seen maps at the very beginning of the war where the occupied territories were like colored red. So if you put the map now, and if you look at the map back after the couple of first days of the war, I don't think you will see a significant difference.
That's very interesting.
That's how I feel. But once again, I'm not there. But we see that since a couple of months, it's getting kind of rather frozen than really quickly changing. Ukrainians have reported they have gained territories. That might be the case, I guess, or that is the case. But still, I mean, if you look at the entire area, not too significant changes have taken place. This is how we see it.
Ambassador Foley.
Hi. I think Hungary has a good knowledge of Russians and probably as good a knowledge of anybody of Vladimir Putin. And it seems to me, I'm just wondering if you have any reason to believe that Putin would be receptive to peace, because I think my impression is that he views Ukraine was part of Russia for 400 years. It's been independent for 30 years. I don't think he really views it as a sovereign state. And so I'm wondering whether you have reason to believe that Putin is receptive.
Well, we have only one way to come to know that. And this only way is that one strong Western leader talks to him about this issue seriously. Because that did not happen so far. No Western, no strong leader have not talking to him seriously about peace since the war has broken out. That's the situation. And why it didn't take place? It has many reasons. One of them is what I tried to say at the beginning, that when it comes to real strong leaders of the Western world, list is not that long, if there's a list at all.
And it is my hope that this discussion today will do the opposite of what you said we have right now, no discussion of peace. I'm hoping that it will begin at least a discussion and promotion of peace talks. Well, the minister has another obligation in just a little while, so I'd like to thank you so much for taking your valuable time today and coming to participate in this discussion. I have given a brochure for Counterpoint Institute. Hopefully we'll have another foreign policy roundtable in about 6 weeks, and I'd love to have you. But my contact information is on here if you would like to get in touch, and I'd appreciate it, especially you from the congressional offices. I would really love to talk with you. Mr. Szijjártó, thank you for your valuable time today.